Okay, so we're just about on time to kick off. So welcome to everyone who is joining us for today's Reactor session. Today's session is the art of approvals, learning from use cases in Microsoft Teams, and it's being run out of the Reactor London. And today's session is being co-delivered, so we're welcoming back Chris Hoard and Vesku. I'm delighted to have them both back with us again. I'm really looking forward to today's session. This session will run over the next about 60 minutes, and that's inclusive of any questions that come in. So if you do have any questions during the session at any stage, feel free to pop them into the chat. It will be moderated throughout, so those questions can be answered throughout. This session is also being recorded. It will be made available to watch on demand on the Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel. So I'll just send a link into the chat where you can access that afterwards. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Chris to kick us off.
Thank you ever so much, Emma, and it's really, really good to be back here at the Reactor. I think the last time I was speaking was back in January or early February. I don't know, time really escapes me. But welcome to this session, The Art of Approvals, Learning from Use Cases in Microsoft Teams. Vesku, do you want to say hello?
Hello, everyone. It's amazing and fun to be here back at Reactor. I don't think I was speaking here before, but I have been moderating one of your sessions, Chris. So hello, everyone.
So thank you ever so much again for taking the time, and this is actually a new session of ours. It's the very first time that we're delivering it, so hopefully you'll get your money's worth today. And also as well, we apologise in advance if there's anything going on between the screen sharing, because Vesku and I are flipping back and forth as we give the demonstrations today. So thank you for bearing with us and for a first time delivery. Now the code of conduct, as you can see here, we add this code of conduct before every session of the Reactor, and it's just some things that we have to bear in mind, such as being aware of others, being welcoming and respectful, and understanding that people may have different points of view. So as we're going through today and you're asking questions throughout this session, please just bear this in mind. It's always great with a Microsoft Reactor because it creates such a friendly, respectful and understanding environment and one. This is why we like participating and coming back again and again. So now we've got past the code of conduct, let's see what we can expect from this session. So we're going to break it down into three parts. Firstly, we're going to talk about why approvals matter within the business environment and what is the approvals app. So it's very much the 101 and why we think this is important to use inside your organization. Secondly is all about the how. So how we use the approvals app, both in terms of the standalone out of the box functionality, but also how we use approvals in workflows. This is going to be a highly demo-centric session, so we really want to show you how you can use it from real business use cases. Last of all, a really small section, what's next? There are things still to come with the approvals app that were announced at Ignite, so if you haven't heard from them, then it's an opportunity to catch up. But all of these three sections, and indeed the session itself, is designed for you to be able to understand what the approvals app is and how it can be used within Microsoft Teams. So it's really getting you up to speed and really giving you some examples that can spur your imagination. And that's why we called it the art of approvals, because by the end of the session, you will be able to go on and use approvals in all different sorts of workflows. This is a level 200 and intermediate session. The scope is going to focus purely on approval flows within Microsoft Teams, so using them and triggering them within Microsoft Teams. As said, the demo content 60 to 70%. And just a caveat, and what we pretty much put on all our Microsoft Teams sessions these days, is that Teams and approvals are rapidly changing. So this session is going to at least be valid for 4 to 6 weeks. We're going to have Microsoft Build come up next month. We're going to have Inspire come on in July, and I'm sure there'll be more functionality that's added to approvals and of course Microsoft Teams in the future. So let's get into it. Why do we need approvals? What is the business need? So approvals are really important pretty much in any organization. Vesco and I both work for IT organizations, and approvals really feature heavily here. But when I'm having a conversation with organizations that are moving to Microsoft 365 or they are starting to use the Power Platform, then approvals is a really good starting point and conversation to have, because pretty much every business has approval processes. They are common processes that occur within business, and this is for many reasons. So the first that Vesco and I identified is that approvals are important in terms of authorization. We can't just do anything we want to do inside our organization. If we want to do certain things, then we will need to get authorization from our line managers or from the rest of the team to be able to go ahead and do what we want to do. We cannot just have carte blanche over our working experience. Just to give you an example, I can't just suddenly drop off a few hours early from work if it's a sunny day to go out and do what I want to do. If I wanted to go and do that, I would need approval from my line manager in order to be able to do that. Secondly, approvals are really important in terms of what we call ratification. So when we need reviews to take place of our work, or if we're doing a review of somebody else's work. So to give a real world scenario here, imagine that I'm writing code and I need to be able to put that code into my production environment, but before I do so, I will not only kind of proof of concept that code in my testing environment, I would also need approval to put it in the production environment, and that would usually come from somebody in the senior leadership team in order to be able to do that. So approvals are not just about authorization, they're also about ratification and checking the work that we've done. Vesco and I, you may not know, but we both blog, and sometimes we have another pair of eyes check that over and kind of say that it's good to go ahead and put on our blog. So again, we're ratifying. So approvals are really good for ratification within organizations. Thirdly, we have the idea of compliance, that as organizations we need to be compliant to our internal processes, but also external processes and laws. One of the great things that you will see today about the approval app is that we can fully audit the approvals, and if, for example, our organization is getting audited from an outside organization, then we are going to be able to have oversight of those approvals, and hence we are compliant. So approvals are really important from a compliance perspective to show that we are authorizing, we are ratifying. Last but not least, and perhaps the most important aspect of all, and why approvals are really important, is this idea of ownership. You may have experienced it in your own business yourself. You ask to do something. Let's take that same example. I need to get off a few hours early from work, and your line manager might have said yes, but there's nothing in writing or authoritative to say that that event occurred. And sometimes, you know, we need a record to make sure that not only that it happened, but that specific people, specific approvers actually said, yes, that can happen. And it shows that the right people made the right decision, which it gives a higher level of ownership within the organization. So there are many different reasons why we need approvals. Now, what is the approval app within Microsoft Teams? Again, we need to understand the fundamentals of this approval app. Vesco and I have called out 4 things that you should be aware of. Number 1, the native Teams application that lets you easily create and manage approvals within your hub for teamwork. So there's a little screenshot of it there on the left-hand side. We have a dedicated app in order to be able to create and manage approvals. So every time, okay, we create an approval within Teams, every time we have to approve something in a workflow, those approvals are going to appear in this approvals app. So that's the first point to understand. The second point is that it's based upon Power Automate infrastructure. Approvals used to be part of Power Automate, but at the beginning of this year, approvals was split out from Power Automate into its own application. And in the bottom left hand corner, you can see that if you click the approvals tab in the Power Automate app, it will actually tell you that we've now split out completely from Power Automate, but it still uses the same infrastructure. The approvals app is based upon ultimately Power Automate. Third, what are these approvals? These approvals are all flows. So because it's based on Power Automate infrastructure, every approval that you do, whether out of the box or part of a workflow, is actually a flow. We're going to show you that for the majority of the rest of the session. Last but not least, all of these approvals have approver, either one person or multiple people who must approve. So it's an app. We create and manage our approvals. It's based upon Power Automate, and every approval that we create or everyone that we manage needs to have an approver, which can be one or multiple people. So hopefully that gives you a very clear idea of what it is and what it is designed to do. Now, Vesku, do you want to say what we need to use it?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris. Of course, to be able to use the approvals application in Teams, you will need Teams. Without that, of course, you are out of luck. So you need Teams, and as Chris explained, you also will need Power Automate because the approvals are running inside it. So usually those are okay on default because they are on. But if your organization has done some changes there, you might have to kind of go through them and to make sure that every employee can use this in their work. But of course, when you're starting about building those approval flows, going deeper and bringing in more tools or features available in, then you may need some other permissions and licenses. But of course, if you're using SharePoint, lists, forms, Power Apps, in there, you are probably covered on default as well. They may be covered with your Microsoft license anyway. So, but unless you have some specific changes in your organization, you don't have to worry about it. But in case you run into troubles, check your admin.
Perfect. Now, we've talked for 10 minutes and that is the longest talking session. So let's get down to the demos. We're going to start with the out-of-the-box functionality. So this real-world scenario is what I've kind of talked about in the introduction. It's the need to leave work only and how we can use the approval flow in the approvals app. So let's get into my Microsoft Teams environment. Here we go. You can see my Teams on the left-hand side. You can see that I've got my app rail here at the very left. And on that app rail, you can see that I've got the approvals app. I've actually pinned it to that app rail. So if I click on the approvals app, okay, it will then load up and you can see that I will have, because I've used this over the past kind of couple of weeks in my demos environment, you can see that I've got a lot of approvals that I've received and that I've had to approve. I can also see the ones that I've sent, but if I want to start a new approval, I will come up here on the top right hand side to new approval request. So this is a new request and I'm going to approve, or I'm going to ask somebody else to approve that I can leave work early. So I'm going to just put in the name of my request. Okay. Leave work at 4:30 p.m. So that is, I'm going to leave work an hour early. I might have worked through my lunch or I might need it, for example, to go to the dentist. What I do is I enter a title, I enter who is going to make the approval inside my organization. So I'm going to use me in this example because it's easier to do this, but you would put in your manager or somebody else within inside your organization who needs to approve that. If you wanted to explain a little bit about what that approval, that always helps because the person that is going to approve it can see exactly why you need to approval to do that. So I'm just going to write it in. I need to leave work at 4:30 p.m. to go to a dental appointment. Okay, I complete that. I can add an attachment if I want. I can even have custom responses. So what does that mean? Well, for example, if I didn't want to use approve and reject, I can write ones, okay, myself. So that, again, it's much more easier to understand the approval. Once I've done that and completed, I then click send. So that's now being sent. That will be sent, okay, to the person who needs to approve it. Now, if I wait a moment or two, what you will see is you will see an activity that pops up and it's going to ask me in order to be able to do the approval. So if I go to the activity, okay, you can see again through the activities that I have a long line of approvals. So I'm just going to go back to the approval app. Just whilst I'm waiting for the other one, I'm just going to kind of reinforce this. Again, new approval app. Okay. Leave work at 4:30 p.m. Okay. Just so you can see how quickly I'm doing this, and I click send, and the approval request is now being created.
Chris, of course, it's great that rarely the approvals are like happening in the second. So this is a demo scenario. That's why we are in a hurry. But usually, of course, people are don't have to worry about if there's a minute or 2 minute delay in that. Because approvals, they are based on Power Automate, so they may take a while before they kick in.
Absolutely. And just whilst they come through, I can also explain the concept of either you can trigger approvals, not just through the approval app, okay, but you can also trigger them through chats and channel conversations too. So if I jump into my team and I will see I've got my approvals team, I go into general, and if I go to start a new conversation, down the bottom, you then have the approvals application there. So if I want to click the approvals application, and I can approve people that are within my team. So there's Vesku, okay. So if you want visibility, you can do, and then if you click send, okay. And you will see here that it's now put the approvals in, okay. This is the first time, so it's just showing that it's setting up, but it's going to show as an adaptive card within the actual team. Now I'm just going to refresh my team screen a second and see if this approval has come through. As Vesku said, it can take 1 or 2 minutes for it to show up. So Vesku, just whilst we're kind of waiting on this, how long have you used approvals from the very start?
Yeah, I have used approvals since, I don't know, over a year now. They became available at the Power Automate, I don't know, over a year ago, but the application itself came out during the early days of this year. So I have been using the approvals even before the approval application. And then it's just, I guess your screen is reading, it's setting up your organization data, so it takes a while before it kind of gets the environment set up. But there's a, meanwhile, when we are waiting, there's a question about, I think, Chris, you would be a perfect one to answer this one. I understand approvals can be stored centrally in a compliance center in Azure. Is that mandatory, and what configuration is required to achieve it? What happens if you don't use compliance center?
That kind of you know, takes a little while to explain. What I will do is I will follow up on that kind of at the end of the session, because otherwise we'll probably become sidetracked from the rest of the demos. But we're waiting still for these to come through. But you saw literally how easy it was to start an approval from the approvals app. You can also start it from a Teams conversation. You can even start it from If I go up to chat on the left-hand side, as you can see there, I've started one with Vesco inside my organization. Again, if we go down to the messaging extensions at the bottom, so you can have approvals through what I would say is public chats, within private chats, or from the approvals app. There's a couple of different ways that you can do that. Now, this was taking a little bit of time for these, you know, it still is taking longer than usual. Might be a bit of latency there. So what I'm going to do is I will show that a little bit later when that crops up, but we'll move on, okay, to the real power of approvals. So you can see that very simple out of the box approvals can take place in Microsoft Teams from a number of different formats. But where approvals are so valuable is when you embed those approvals within workflows and what we call pre and post approval triggers and actions. So I want you to kind of visualize what I'm showing you here, and we're going to work through these kind of 3 steps. So number 1, imagine that I upload a document to a team within Microsoft Teams, and I upload that to the Files tab. Well, we use Power Automate, okay, to be able to create a workflow, and then we put an approval in there. So after I've uploaded that file, or they reject it. If the person approves it, then the team is notified, and the team in both Teams and an email. So that's what, like, kind of, you can have an action if it's approved. Otherwise, if it's rejected, you can then have a, you know, the document is removed and the uploader. So the real power of approvals, moving beyond the kind of out of the box, is really to put the approval in the middle of a workflow, which, as shown here, how do we do it? We don't build it in the approvals app itself. We actually do it within Power Automate. Now, I heard a ding. There we go. You can see, whilst I was explaining that, the approval request came through. You can see Chris Hoard to leave work at 4:30. This, you know, as an approver, I will put in a comment. So only this once. And as you can see, there are my custom. So I click yes. And there we go, final status. I get notified again. So the person, okay, who raised this approval would then be notified that the approval was actually granted. And as you can see, that approval then sits within my approvals app. I've got a complete list of it there. But moving back on, as we said, the power of approvals is not just in having the standalone approvals that we can have for ad hoc approval requests to other people within, but it's when we embed them into this workflow. And this is where we're going to get on with the kind of the majority of the demos, because we want to show you it in as many contexts as possible. So Vesco, if you want to kind of take the screen from this point, so Vesco's going to start off with an approval flow that uses Teams and SharePoint, and this is all based around document approval within the organization.
Thank you, Chris. And yes, we switched the screen. And coming back very shortly to that compliance center question is about what happens if you don't use it. Well, I don't use it in my demo environment, so basically nothing happens. It's there, it's in your, but you don't have to use it to be able to use the approvals, but you can get that information through there eventually. All right, the demo I was about to show, and let's see how many demo effects I'm going to get, because of course they will be more complex demos as usual, but this is about the document approval that's happening within a team. And checking out how it is going to go forward, let's go and find my right there, the approval part. This is about the flow, showing you around what's happening here. Is that when we get a request about that the document needs to be approved, it's going to get eventually into the SharePoint list, and I will get that information from that list. Okay, this is the document that needs to be approved. We are updating that information that it's being sent for approval. Then I'm going to get the comment from the latest editor of that document. Please do comment that that's happening inside Teams as well, while we are going through this approval phase. And then the magic one is about creating the approval. So we are having this first to respond type of approval. We are having a title. We are customizing that with the document name. It's assigned to 2 persons in this demo. It's fixed ones, and then I have some details. So I have some information about the document, the name again. You will see soon why. 10 is about the information who was the last one to edit it, and just a slight of a hand of trick there is that if you format your URL in that way, you can send an instant Teams message to that user if you want. And then there's the comment that person entered when he was entering the request for the approval. Then we can use the files. This is in SharePoint, this file, so there's a direct link to that item. And we have also the description, which is the document name again. And going forward, I have created in these 2 phases, but basically then we are waiting for the approval. And once the approval is done, we are updating the information about the outcome of the approval to the SharePoint list. And once we have done it, and we can kind of just ping out the information to the user about what was the result, and updating that it has been approved or rejected again. Okay, and let's see this one in action. I'm going to be using 2 demo users here. I have a file in approvals, it's just an approval demo. But what is different than usually is that I have a link for request approval directly in Teams files. And this is using a bit of Azure Logic Apps to do the magic, so that's where it goes. So when I click the request for approval, it goes beyond Microsoft 365 and approval process has started. You can now close this item. That Logic App is writing that to the SharePoint list, and then we just do the waiting game we did earlier about when that is going to be starting up. It's writing the information to the list, and then there's going to be a slight delay when it's going to be starting. And once it starts, we can see the approval status updating here, that it's going to go for send approval, and I will get a notification from Power Automate. And just out of curiosity, don't click that toast anymore, just click through the chat if you want to go to the directly to be able to respond that. So we just put the demo approval, that's a comment on the approval demo document, and we hit it in. And now it goes forward. Now it's creating the approval request, and it's going for the other account. It's not going to the Steve, it's going for Kelly, and Steve has sent you a request for approvals. And now I can see the request here on my list that I have a document approval demo. Yeah, the name is there in case you have a very small screen, so it's a kind of good to be in here. And it's been last modified by Steve, and that would be a deep link to the or link to the Teams chat. And this is the approval information with the link to the file itself. And we can see it's pending from either this person, Kelly, or my alter ego from there. And this is OK. Let's try to type correctly, and we hit the approve. And then we can see what has just happened, but it's going forward like Megan that Sulava mentioned you. It's that, OK, that document has been reviewed by Kelly, and it's been approved, and it's going forward. And going back to Steve, we can see that, OK, the final stage is approved. We have the record of that, who approved when and what happened, and going to the files, we should be seeing it has been approved in there. So that's kind of one very quick demo in that sense about how you can go on with document approvals. Okay, I guess it was back to you, Chris.
Yeah, I'm just going to share my my screen. Okay. So we're back to myself. Now this is an approval flow with Teams, Forms, List and Yammer. So it's taking several Microsoft 365 applications. And the real world scenario here was relaying training feedback into the rest of the business. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer. I head up the education part of the group that I work for. And I wanted a mechanism with which once somebody gives good feedback about the course, I can broadcast that to the rest of my organization. Now I can do this with approvals and Power Automate and these other applications. So let me just go and show you. I've got them all lined out here, but I want to make sure I've got the right one. So when somebody has completed a course, they come to a Microsoft form online. You can see that I've built one here, and they fill out their name, the course that they've attended, the instructor, and how they rated that course. Now, I want to kind of relay to the rest of the business when somebody gives me a 5, because that looks very good, you know, on the education and training and gets buy-in for the rest of the organization. So inside my flow, so let me just move that one here, you can see that, you know, when an item, okay, is is this the 2 seconds? I want to make sure I got the right one. Okay, here we go. This is it. Sorry about that. So when a new response is submitted, so when they submit it to the form, what happens is that the form details then go, okay, into a list. So they're housed in a list, and then what happens is that Microsoft Teams posts a message to say that there is, you know, so let me go back to that, sorry. Once it creates the list, we then have a condition action that says if the course rating contains a 5, so if somebody is given through the form a rating of 5 and that appears in the list, what then happens is that a message is posted to Teams, and then if we approve it, it will then push it out to Yammer. If they get anything underneath a 5, so if they get a 1, 2, 3, and 4, then this flow is simply going to terminate. No action is going to happen. So what we're doing is that we're filtering that feedback that comes through the form, and if it's a 5, we're going to go on and it's going to appear in the team, we're going to approve it, and it's going to appear to the rest of the organization. Let's actually kind of see that in action. So let's say, okay, you have somebody that's attended a course, we're just going to call them Mr. Jones, and they've attended course 1, and the instructor in this was Vesku. And they said, Vesku was really good. I had a great experience. I'm going to give that course a 5. So I'm just going to submit that. Okay. Now, inside, you're going to see it go into the list. So in a second. So let me just start and trigger this flow. I'm going to manually trigger this flow. You're going to see it trigger. Okay. So now if I go and call up the associated list that houses the information. Wait a moment. So you can see, okay, still taking time to be able to trigger. Let's go back and see if it's triggered it again. Taking a bit of time today. Could be my connectivity. Mm-hmm. 2 seconds. Okay, going to see if this is, I'm going to trigger that test again. Sorry about this, seems to be a little bit of a latency this morning. See it turn again. Come on. No, I don't think this is gonna. I don't think we're having to see it work. Submit. Okay, second. Yeah, let's see if it's even done it at all. Okay.
Yeah, it's usually that perhaps it's too hot at England at the moment, or UK.
Yeah,
when it's colder, you know, processors run better. So Finland is a very good place to run flows.
Yeah. I'm getting. You know what? 2 seconds. We'll see if it.
Yeah, but I guess things like that. The audience, you can see we are doing this live. We don't have pre-recorded demos, and so hiccups can happen. But should we?
Let me just see if I can get it. If I can get it going one last time. I mean, it could be stuck in this section here. I want to make sure that people see this working if it possibly can. It could be that the web page is open for a little bit kind of longer than it should have been. So let's see if I can. We'll give it literally 1 minute and see if this kind of works out. I think it might be actually, could be my connectivity. I'm going to go back and see if the course list has been updated whatsoever. It looks like it's getting stuck, which means that it could be a data center thing. I mean, it could be that there's a service issue potentially here in the UK where the tenant I'm using is deployed, because I'm having a lot of load up. Yeah, look, it's not even appearing on the list. It's at the flow end. So what we're going to do, I think we're just going to move on, because for the sake of time, I'm sorry, obviously, that we couldn't show you that that particular demo. If at the end I've got a little bit of time, and then I can show you it actually completing. So maybe we'll go on with Vesku and Power Virtual Agents. Vesku, do you want to take over from here?
Yes, I'm taking over it. There, you can see my screen. Yes. All right. So the next demo, let's see how many effects we get this time. But basically, it's about taking a sick day at work. Yeah, and you have a Power Virtual Agent, so a bot. You are feeling really ill. You are at your mobile in bed probably, or trying to get into the doctor, and you just want to signal your work that, okay, I will be ill and I won't be able to come today, and so there has to be an approval process of that, of course. So let's go and take a look at what the flows look like, or the conversation part. Here I have a Power Virtual Agent discussion, and I will show that in demo in a moment. But the key thing here is just that it's calling a flow. It's calling Power Automate call to action, calling in sick. And it's going to relay the user information and number of sick days and the message to be relayed to the manager and HR. And when it goes to the flow, it gets from Power Virtual Agent, it gets the user information, fetches the manager information, posts some information to the manager and to the person itself. So basically they know, okay, this is what I sent to your manager, so this is the same message. And returns to the Power Virtual Agent while running the approval actually in the other branch. And in here, it's going to be sending that approval request to the manager and a couple of other persons, me and the HR manager, and then telling the facts, okay, this is happening, somebody is ill, and it's going to be away for some days, and there's going to be an approval, and if it's been approved, then we are sending automatically out of office to that person. This is calling Azure API management or managed API in Azure to do the trick, and then sending the message, okay, basically that it has been updated and sent to HR system. Well, there's no HR system in this demo, but it would be easy to include that in the set out of office part. All right, so let's go to the bot and say, I am sick today. I will be just telling that to the bot. Okay, sorry to hear, and are you sure? I was just testing around. Yes, I'm sick. Yeah. Okay, I will be away from work, let's say 3 days. And this is, I am feeling really bad. I have to call a doctor. and sending that information. So the bot is going to be sending that information forward, and because now it's this Steve is based in Germany, it will fetch that Steve information already about, okay, you were in Germany, this is the, it looks up for the country, so you can get the relevant information, how to get to the occupational health care, and I have contacted your manager. Speedy recovery, and there was that message that it was being sending, okay, this is what I sent to your manager. And looking from the manager side, okay, we have a couple of notifications here on the left-hand side. On the chat, yeah, we see the same message, Steve is ill for 3 days. And there's the message, I have to call a doctor. And checking out the really the key here is the approval part. Now we are getting the information about sending to HR system, or it could be titled that, okay, approving that Steve is ill. And we'll be away for 3 days, and you can see some nice formatting here. Okay, that was the person's name and identity, and we just approve, okay, take the time you need. And this is going to be going forward. So Kelly is approving that, okay, Steve is sick, and then we can go back to Steve, and we can see final status approved, and that flashed out so quickly, so we want to kind of check it from the feed, and we can see Kelly approved and take the time you need. But there was the second part. What about if we open the calendar and do a little refresh, and now it's saying the automatic replies have been turned on, so you can do magic in here when you are going beyond the Office 365. It's been set automatically to be out away for 3 days. So this is how you are building a bit of business processes in this environment. So you can do things and you include the approval in one part, so things go forward in there. And I guess I'm going to take the speeding up for the next demo as well, because I had 2 demos this time. It's basically about how do you add a new customer to your CRM system, or actually not about adding, but approving that new customer. Should the information be enriched by the background process? So, and how you can use this approval with somebody that's external from Office 365. And in this case, it's going to be a Business Central, adding a new customer there and putting in the information. So let me find my users. I have 2 users, and as always, it's always a good idea to kind of refresh these screens and see what's going on. It's basically that I have a demo environment about the Business Central, and I will be starting to create a new customer here. So yeah, and it's in Dutch for some reason, but let's put here approval demo customer, put some credit limit there. Yeah, we are rich, and put let's put here castles. Actually, let's just put Linnakatu, which is a castle street in Finland, and then we have a city of Turku. That's where I live in. And it's all the time saving the information. But that's not the point. The point will be about requesting the approval. Okay, what's happening with the request of approval is that I almost missed this part. Okay, what's it going to do next when I click that? I didn't click that one yet. Is that I can use these business application triggers. Now, instead of having a trigger on the SharePoint list or something else, I can get the trigger for when a customer approval is requested by the Business Central. I get that information, and I will create an approval request based on that information. And no, I didn't set the website. And based on that condition, if that was approved, I can then execute the action to say it has been approved and send that information back. And I will, by the way, update the record to have a very long list of stuff I could do there, just put the home page in. So this can happen, or if it's been rejected, then it's going to be rejected in there. So let's open these screens and start the request for approval. And we send the approval request when we have created a new customer. And if I just refresh on the approver side, basically the manager side, I can see that, okay, there's an approval demo customer that's going to appear there. There's going to be some information, but it hasn't been cleared for use. You cannot put bills in there. And now we already saw briefly activity about that. Yeah, I have done a few demos about this. We can see that we have this approval here on the right. We can see that information on Turku. There's no website there. And let's just go ahead and approve the request so the customer is ready to be used. All right, and if I go ahead and refresh the page again, that's a good thing to do. You are running less to specific issues. And opening this customer, we can see the home page has been set directly by the flow. So using the approval, then perhaps fetching some backend information, more how you enrich the customer and then release that customer to be used. You can use the approval inside Office 365, inside Teams, even when you have an external location where you start triggering it. Okay, what about if it's such a legacy system? Well, it's been already mentioned that Azure Logic Apps, that's perhaps a great place to start with, and you bring the information to SharePoint list. But hey, we already did that with the document approval part. I guess it's time to head back to the Chris soon, and let me just show the next slide. Basically, what we have been covering here, we have been doing singular approvals. We've been just going through the phase. We had an approve, it's either approve or reject, and we do some things based on that. But after that, we can go to the much more complex phases, and I think Chris will be very happy to talk to you about this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you ever so much, Vesku, and those were great demonstrations. Yeah, my demo environment is completely all over the place. So, but I will be able to kind of show the flows for both sequential and parallel approvals. So I'm just going to go and share my screen a second and get back to where we need to be. There we go. So, as Vesku mentioned, you can have, typically approval processes when organizations first implement them, they tend to be what we call singular. So in other words, it's that out of the box approval which somebody else would approve, or a very simple workflow such as I upload a document to the Files tab in Microsoft Teams, and then somebody approves it. But in addition to using different apps, there's also different ways to approve. So we want to start kind of considering what we call sequential and parallel approvals. So sequential approvals are kind of chains of approval. So imagine that I submit an approval request to, or in a workflow, when I upload that document, the first approval goes to my line manager, and then the second approval goes to their line manager, and the third approval then goes, and you can do kind of up the chain in terms of doing approvals. So they're called sequential. So it's almost working through in a linear fashion several approvals or gateway. Parallel approvals are slightly different in that you would have approvals from many individual actors within inside an organization. So for example, I submit a request and it gets kind of approved by our finance department and our operations department and our technical department and so forth. So this is all designed, whereas sequential is really almost like kind of gateways down that process. Parallel is having multiple people that are independent of each other doing it at the same time. And I can actually show you how you build that within inside your environment, considering that none of these flows, see, look, one's still kind of trying to execute there. So we'll take a look at the sequential approval first. Now, I want you to imagine in this scenario that we're ratifying new professional services. So I used to be the head of professional services, as I said in my group, and every single time that I needed to be able to put a new professional service out or sell it, I would have to either do one of these, a sequential or parallel approval. Sequential, it usually used to run through multiple departments one at a time, and parallel is to do them all at the same time. Now, how I've actually built this with inside Flow is using a list and using a flow. So if I have my approval and I go to my team, Okay, let's see if this loads up this time. So let's start off with a sequential approval and see if it's actually going to load up this list now. It may not even, but imagine that, there we go. So imagine that I add a new line item to this. So you can see it's the professional service. It's the professional service itself, the code. It would have like a statement of work, like an attachment. There would be a cost, and you would have a number of days in order to be able to do that. It needs to be approved by the tech, the finance department, and the commercial before that professional service can go to market. Now, in the sequential scenario, when I add an item to that list, okay, it triggers the first approval, and the first approval is with technical, and then what will happen is that I will then add a condition action afterwards that said if the outcome was approved, so if it was approved from technical, we then write the response to the list, and then we trigger the second approval. So if it didn't pass technical, it would get rejected, and then the flow would terminate. Nothing more would happen, or I would put an email to whoever created that professional service for them to notify them that the process hasn't worked. But as you can see, if it was approved by technical, it comes through to have a financial kind of review, and we do the same thing. We put a condition. So if finance approved it, it then comes down, it writes to the list, and then starts a third approval so that commercial can then sign it off. Again, if it gets rejected at the financial point, the flow terminates. But approval, it triggers the second approval upon a successful approval, and then it triggers the third. So what we're doing is that we're going through, and if we do it this way, it's very easy to be able to create that sequential approval. Now, I can always try and see if this one will trigger. Okay, so if I do manage migration again, and I say that cost is £700, and I put the number of days in as 1. I don't put anything else in because those other boxes will be filled from others. I click save. So look, you can see it's in grey now. Looks exactly the same. If I try to trigger this one, let's see if this one will trigger, but I doubt it. Okay, let's see if this does. Let's see if anything happens within. There we go. So sent me a request. So there's the technical review. I click approve, and then it clicks the second. So it sent me the second one. So you've got to imagine that these are going to different people at this point. The second one approves. And then the third one, which is the commercial, and then clicks approve. And then once they're all approved, we can go back, okay, to our approval. And you can see that it's turned to green because it's had approval from every single kind of approver. So tech's approved it, financial has approved it, and commercial approved it. I can move forward with putting my my professional service and beginning to sell that and doing what I've got to do in the go-to-market process. Okay, the next one, okay, which is the parallel approvals. It's pretty similar from a flow perspective. So I'll go into this one. So when we create the item, what we do is we branch, okay, the approval. So we create our first approval. Then what we do is we actually come here to insert this new step. So once we've created the first approval, we click the little plus button and we add a parallel branch. That is really the key to doing parallel approvals. So we create our trigger action, we create our approval action, and between the two of them, we insert a parallel branch. So we can add several parallel branches and proceed to do the approval side by side. You can see I've got one approval for the technical, one approval for the financial, and one for the commercial. When they give their approval, exactly the same thing happens within Teams. It's exactly the same scenario. They all give their separate approvals, and once they've given their separate approvals, then it will turn green and I can proceed with rolling out the professional service. If one rejects it, however, they can also leave comments and I can then go. So you can see the comment here, needs better documentation to cover third-party DNS. Once I've done that, I can resubmit it and hopefully I will get a successful outcome in the future. So I'm really glad, okay, that demo actually kind of worked this time. I do not know what was up with the other one. So moving on to some general considerations and limitations, because we've only got a few minutes and we want to make sure that we cover some of your questions at the end too. Some of the things we have to realize about approvals with inside Microsoft Teams. Number one is in terms of backup. So approvals are saved to the default Dataverse environment, but this is not backed up. That's something that Microsoft does not support yet. So the default environment or default Dataverse environment is created when your tenant is created, when you start using Microsoft 365. That's not backed up by default, so we don't get any backup with that. However, approval actions are coveted under the audit log. So they're auditable in the Microsoft 365 Compliance Center. If you want to kind of get a backup of the approval, then ultimately you can export the audit log after a period of time, because approval actions do appear in the audit log. Number three, in terms of can you build approval kind of workflows across tenants? Not at this current time. I mean, you can't have, you have to build it inside Power Automate within your organization. You can't have one half of the workflow in one organization and one in the other. But one of the cool things that Vesco and I did a couple of weeks back was test whether this process works out on guests, and guests can be approver of approval actions. So if the user exists inside your Azure Active Directory, if they're a guest within your team, then they can be part of the approval process. And what happens is that instead of it appearing in their approval app, what'll happen is that the guest will be emailed and then they will click on the email. It'll be called into Power Automate in the other organization, and then you would approve it there. So the approval for the guest wouldn't happen natively within the approvals app. It would happen in Power Automate in the organization's environment. Last but not least is about formatting. Vesku, do you want to talk about this, considering that you like formatting within your approvals?
Yes, I think people already saw some of those examples, what you can do with the Markdown. So you can use bolding, you can use italics lists and links if you start creating a better looking approvals. And of course, I encourage you to use it, but not full Markdown is supported. So there are limitations, especially at the moment. And in some clients, some things may be working better or not, but if you just check on the mobile and Teams, then it's relatively okay. Do we have the next future of approvals? I guess what's coming up for approvals, of course, something really exciting is the templates. Those have been already highlighted at Tech Community, where the picture is from. So that's when you can start using the pre-made approval templates. So you have a kind of a nice formatting when you create those ad hoc approvals using the approval application. But the beautiful thing is that you can also do your own templates. So you can have consistent approvals happening in your organization. For example, for those I'm leaving work early reasons, so you can have people ask those right questions or answer the right questions. Adobe Sign integration is coming later this month or early next month, but basically that means that there's an e-sign request and you can handle those e-sign processes with the approval application. OneDrive and SharePoint attachments are coming also in this month. The OneDrive is already there, so you can upload a document from OneDrive there, but you can also use the SharePoint Online to kind of, for example, team files and upload it there to your approval application. If you are using Flow, as you saw, you can already use those. And the full Markdown support is coming as well, so you can make a much better, richer, better looking approval requests. And that's something I'm really waiting for, because that opens up more possibilities.
Perfect. So there's a kind of a lot of things that are coming in the next month or so. I mean, we're getting pretty close to the end of April, so it remains to be seen as whether they will be in here this month or whether we might just kind of spill over a little bit into the next month. But hopefully all of them will be here by May. So returning to the outcome, okay, we really broke this down into 3 parts. It was quite a very ambitious session of ours, because it was 60 to 70%. There was a lot of demo inside it, and of course when you're demoing, as you've seen today, most went right, but one thing unfortunately didn't work out, and hopefully I'll get to show you that on another time. But we looked at why approvals are necessary inside the organization, and what the approvals app actually is. It's important that we understand what it is. We looked at how, so we looked at both doing approvals out of the box in the approvals app, or taking place within chats and conversations within Microsoft Teams. But we also looked at a number of scenarios about whether approvals can be fitted within workflows where we have pre-approval trigger or actions, or post-approval. But approvals can work whether you're working with Dynamics 365, or whether you're working with forms, or whether you're working with Power Virtual Agents, or whether you're just having a simple scenario like whether to approve documents and files, whether that's in OneDrive or SharePoint. So we've tried to be as diverse as we possibly can across the Microsoft 365 stack, but also kind of bring in other clouds as well. At the end, we had a very quick view, as said, of what's next, but we hope that this session today has helped you to understand the approvals app and how it can be used within Microsoft Teams, because every single one of these scenarios, what they had in common was it was to be used within Microsoft Teams, and for that approvals app to be used within Microsoft Teams. So if we've done that today, then we've achieved our job. If it gives you an idea about how you can start using it within your workflows, or using it for simple scenarios within your business, then we have absolutely done our job today. So this was a level 200 session. The scope focused on approval flows within Microsoft Teams. So we did do that for, there's another completely different conversation to have with Azure and with Logic Apps. So we have not covered that today. Maybe we'll come back and do another session about that in the future. We've tried to keep it demo heavy. We love showing you as opposed to just reading off slides. And of course, that caveat. Things could be different in 4 weeks' time with Build coming along and all of those new ads. Vesku, is there anything to add?
Not really. This has been a great session to do, of course. So thank you, everyone, and please do let us know how did we do. So there's a survey link, so you can use that and with the code to answer the survey. And of course, there's some URLs coming up about the teamsnation.rocks/join. So please meet us there at the Teams Nation in the meetup group. For example, and especially in the Teams Nation, the community conference event that's going to happen on 12th of May.
So yes, I mean, Vesku and I are both organisers of the event. We'll both be speaking there. Please come and join us. We've got lots of people from Microsoft and lots of MVPs and community members. So it's a very simple join process. It's teamsnation.rocks/register, and you can view every session at teamsnation.rocks/hub. But we would like to thank you kind of ever so much for coming along today and seeing us. We hope you got real value. It was the first time we did it, so of course next week we'll be doing it again at the Microsoft 365 Virtual Marathon. You'll probably see a little bit of a kind of more polished and tighter session, and we'll do some checks and do some runs to make sure. But as Vesku said, it is live. You always run the risk of these things that if you do them live, but that's how we like to do it. We do take the risk because we actually want to show you how it all works to best convey. We're both very passionate in terms of the this approvals app, and you're going to continue to see us blog and demo and do sessions on it moving forward. Before we close, Vesku, was there any other kind of questions and stuff from that we had today?
There was some discussion about the logic apps and SharePoint, how to design. We have a design to use approvals in collaboration with SharePoint and logic apps, and do we have any guidance for the use of approvals? And I replied in the Q&A for that from my part. And there was the other comment, like for the demo scenario, of course, you could use the test option and just run through your last test and show how the process really works in there. But I don't think we have time to revisit the demo at that point anymore. But there wasn't much questions, but I think that means either that there weren't anybody, or that people were very happy about what they were seeing and they did get new questions from that.
Perfect. Well, we really hope that you enjoyed it from us today. We're so passionate about these things, about the integration with Power Platform and Teams in general. We're big advocates. We work with Microsoft a lot on it. Thank you ever so much for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure to be back at the Reactor. I'm sure we'll be back very soon with another subject on Teams or Power Platform. But in the meantime, thank you ever so much all for attending. We wish you a great rest of the day and the week, and we hope to see you. Of course, let me get to the right slide. We hope to see you at Teams Nation. Very easy to register. But in the end, take care. Thank you ever so much, and thank you, Emma, again for having us.
Thank you.